He lost everything when his wife died, until a poor girl stopped him on a frozen street wearing a butterfly necklace meant to be buried forever. One question shattered his world. One child forced the truth back into the light, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Chicago winter cut through the city like a blade, sharp and unforgiving. Wind rushed between glass towers and steel bridges, carrying the sound of traffic and the quiet exhaustion of people trying to survive another cold day. Inside a black sedan, Callan Voss, 46, sat wrapped in perfect warmth. The leather seats were heated. The windows were tinted. The world outside felt distant, like something happening on a screen instead of real life. Callan watched pedestrians hurry along the sidewalk, parents tugging children forward, couples sharing scarves, strangers avoiding eye contact. Once scenes like this had made him smile. Once he had believed life was happening everywhere all at once. Now it just moved without him. 3 years earlier, Mara had died. Not dramatically, not loudly. She had simply faded from the world after a short, cruel illness, leaving behind a silence that no amount of money could fill. Callan still ran a powerful tech company. He still lived in a penthouse overlooking the river. He still signed deals that moved markets. But inside, something essential had gone quiet. "Sir," his driver said gently, "your board call starts in 20 minutes. Callan nodded, eyes still fixed on the street. The car slowed at a red light near the Riverwalk. That was when he saw her. A young girl, maybe 13, moving with quiet determination through the crowd. She wasn't begging. She wasn't performing desperation. She carried a small stack of flyers, offering them politely to passers-by, accepting rejection without complaint. She wore a thin jacket too light for the weather. Her face was calm but guarded, like someone who had learned to be careful without becoming bitter. Then the light caught something at her neck. A butterfly pendant. Blue. Small. Perfect. Callan's breath stopped. Because he knew that pendant. He had designed it himself. And it should have been gone forever. For a moment, Callan thought his mind was playing a cruel trick. Grief did that, sometimes turned memories into hallucinations, hope into pain. But as the girl stepped closer to the curb, the pendant swung lightly against her chest, catching the pale winter sunlight. It was real. The butterfly's wings curved exactly the way he remembered. The blue stone at its center glowed with the same impossible depth. No jeweler would accidentally recreate something so precise. This wasn't similar. It was the pendant. "Stop the car," Callan said. His driver hesitated. "Sir, the meeting now." The sedan eased to the curb. Cold air rushed in as Callan stepped out, the wind cutting through his coat, but he barely noticed. His eyes stayed locked on the small figure ahead. The girl turned a corner. Callan followed, heart pounding, not from exertion, but from the sudden return of something he had buried carefully for years. He remembered Paris, a quiet workshop, the jeweler's steady hands, Mara's laughter when she opened the box, her fingers brushing the butterfly like it was alive. He remembered believing that love could be protected by beauty. The girl stopped near a cafe window, adjusting her flyers. Callan slowed his pace, making sure she saw him coming. He stopped at a respectful distance, hands visible. "Excuse me," he said calmly. "I'm sorry to interrupt." The girl looked up, alert but not afraid. Her eyes were sharp, measuring. "That necklace," Callan continued, careful with every word. "The butterfly. Where did you get it?" Her hand rose instantly to her chest, covering it. "It's mine." "I believe you," Callan said quickly. "I'm not trying to take it. I'm asking because I knew someone who had one exactly like it." The girl studied his face, then answered, her voice steady. "It was a gift from my mom." The word mom hit him harder than the cold. Callan swallowed, forcing himself to breathe. "Your mother," he said gently. "What was her name?" The girl hesitated, eyes flicking briefly to the street, to the cafe, to the people moving past them. She wasn't afraid of him, but she wasn't careless either. "You're just Some rich guy, she said. Rich guys ask questions like they already own the answers. Callan nodded, accepting the judgment without argument. Slowly, he reached into his coat and pulled out a business card, holding it out instead of pushing it forward. My name is Callan Voss, he said. I'm not here to buy anything. I just need to understand. The girl didn't take the card, but she looked at it. I'm Ivy, she said finally. Ivy Wills. Callan waited. My mom's name was Marin Wills, Ivy continued, and this is the only thing I have left of her. The words settled between them, heavy and final. Callan's chest tightened. I'm sorry, he said. Would you be willing to talk somewhere warm, public place? Your choice. Ivy considered him for a long moment, then nodded toward the cafe across the street. Window seat. Inside, warmth wrapped around them. Ivy sat where everyone could see. Callan respected the space she kept between them. He nodded toward the pendant again, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought that necklace was gone. Ivy's jaw tightened. She wrapped her fingers around the butterfly, not angrily, just firmly. Then she spoke quietly, with a calm that felt far too old for her age. So, she chose to live. A pause. Her eyes didn't fill with tears. They stayed clear. Just not with me. Callan felt something inside him fracture, not loudly, not cleanly, but completely. Callan didn't rush to fill the silence. He didn't try to fix Ivy's sentence with an adult explanation. He simply sat there steady, letting her words settle like snow on a wound. Ivy, he said quietly, I'm not here to take anything from you. Not the necklace. Not your story. She stared into her hot chocolate as if the steam might hide her face. People say that she muttered. I know. Callan's voice softened. So I'll show you instead of saying it. He didn't move closer. He didn't reach for the pendant. He didn't ask to touch her phone or her bag. He only asked one small, careful question, one that felt like stepping onto a thin bridge. Do you have a picture of your mom? Ivy's hand tightened around the cup. Her eyes flicked to the window. Outside, strangers passed without noticing the hurricane happening at their table. Finally, she slid her worn wallet from the side pocket of her bag and opened it with 2 fingers, as if the memory inside could cut. She pulled out a folded photograph and laid it on the table. Callan's blood turned cold. The woman in the picture had Mara's smile, gentle, uneven, familiar, in a way that made his chest ache. The same dimple on the left cheek. The same graceful hands. But her hair was longer, darker, and the expression in her eyes wasn't the polished confidence the world had seen beside him at charity galas. This woman looked unguarded. Callan's mouth went dry. When was this taken? 5 years ago, Ivy said. By the lake. She called it our brave day. 5 years. Callan's mind tried to do the math, but his heart refused to cooperate. He met Mara 4 years ago. He married her 3. He buried her 1. So how could Ivy reclaimed the photo, quickly folding it like a secret? So you know her or not? Callan's hands trembled as he reached for his phone. Not as a power move, as proof. I'm going to show you something, he said gently. And you can decide what you think after. He opened his favorites, years of images he couldn't bear to delete, and found the one that always hurt the most, their wedding day. Mara in white, laughing with her head thrown back, her butterfly pendant glowing against her throat. Callan turned the screen toward Ivy. Ivy stared for 1 heartbeat. Then her face drained of color. That's... Her voice cracked. That's my mom. Callan's eyes burned. She was my wife. Ivy recoiled like the words were too hot to touch. No, that's impossible. My mom wasn't married. She shook her head hard. She died. I was there. I saw her. I went to the funeral. Callan's throat tightened until it hurt. I don't understand it either. Ivy's fingers flew to the pendant, clutching it so tightly, her knuckles went pale. Then why do you have her? Why do you get to have pictures with her like that? Callan flinched, not because it was cruel, but because it was true from her angle. He lowered his phone slowly. "I didn't steal her from you," he whispered. "But I can see why it feels that way." Ivy's eyes shone with something sharper than tears. "I need to go," she said, standing abruptly. "This is too weird." Callan stood too careful, no grabbing, no blocking. "Okay, you can go, but can I ask one more thing?" Ivy paused, breathing fast. Callan's voice was quiet, wrecked, and honest. "Who takes care of you?" Ivy didn't answer at first. She looked at Callan like he'd asked her to hand over a part of herself. "My guardian," she said, finally cautious. "Renee Park." Callan nodded. "Could I call her right now? On speaker, so you hear everything?" That made Ivy blink. It wasn't what she expected. Most adults demanded trust before earning it. Callan was offering transparency first. Still, she hesitated. "She's at work," Ivy muttered, but her hand drifted toward her phone anyway. Callan didn't push. "If she says no, I'll leave. You'll never see me again." "I promise." Ivy studied him for a long moment, then unlocked her phone and dialed. A tired woman's voice answered. "Ivy, what is it, sweetheart?" Ivy glanced at Callan. "I'm with someone. In a cafe. He wants to talk to you." "Who is he?" The voice sharpened instantly. Callan leaned forward slightly, speaking clearly into the phone without trying to charm. "Ms. Park, my name is Callan Voss. I'm sorry to intrude." "Ivy has a necklace," Renee cut in, instantly alert. "What necklace?" Callan swallowed. "A butterfly pendant. I commissioned it years ago for my wife." Silence stretched so long Callan thought the call had dropped. Then Renee's voice returned lower. "Where are you?" Ivy gave the location. "I'm coming," Renee said. "Ivy, you stay in the cafe. Window table. You hear me? Don't go outside with anyone." Ivy's shoulders relaxed a fraction. "Okay." The call ended. Callan exhaled slowly, his pulse still hammering. Ivy sat back down, arms crossed, eyes fixed on him like a warning sign. "You messed this up?" she said, voice flat, "and Renee will end you?" Callan almost smiled, then caught himself. "That's fair." 20 minutes later, the cafe door opened and Renee Park walked in like a storm, wearing a diner uniform under a heavy coat. She was early 50s. Hair pulled back, eyes exhausted the way only people who work too hard for too little get exhausted. She scanned the room, spotted Ivy, then locked onto Callan. Her steps slowed. Her face changed. Recognition. Shock. Grief. "You," she said softly, as if the word tasted bitter. "You're him." Callan rose, hands open at his sides. "Miss Park, Renee, thank you for coming." Renee didn't sit down right away. She leaned toward Ivy and brushed a hand lightly over the girl's shoulder, brief, grounding, protective. "You okay?" she asked. Ivy nodded once, but didn't speak. Renee finally sat, but her gaze never left Callan. "How did you find her?" Callan's voice broke in spite of him. "I saw the pendant, and I knew it." Renee's jaw tightened. "Of course you did." Ivy's eyes narrowed. "You know him." Renee closed her eyes for 1 second like she was gathering strength. Then she looked at Ivy, and her voice softened into something painful. "Sweetheart," she said, "I need you to hear this carefully. And I need you to remember one thing: none of this is your fault." Ivy swallowed. "Just say it." Renee turned back to Callan. "I always wondered if this day would come," she whispered. "I just didn't think it would start with that necklace." Callan's throat tightened. "Please, tell me what's going on." Renee's eyes were glossy but steady. "Maren didn't die when you think she did," she said. "And the woman you married was the life they built on top of her." Renee didn't dramatize. She didn't look for sympathy. She spoke like someone who'd held a heavy box for years and finally had to set it down. In early 2019, she began. Maren was diagnosed with aggressive cancer. It moved fast, the kind that makes every day sound like a countdown. Callan's eyes squeezed shut. He'd known Mara had been sick before she'd mentioned a hard year in vague, careful phrases. He'd never known what that year actually cost. She was a single mom, Renee continued. She was terrified, not of dying, of leaving Ivy behind with nothing but questions. Ivy's fingers tightened around her hot chocolate cup. Her face stayed still, but her breathing changed shallow, controlled. Callan leaned forward, voice hoarse. Why didn't she ask for help? Foundations hospitals, Renee gave him a look that cut clean. Because she wasn't you, Mr. Voss. She didn't have doors opening when she knocked. She had paperwork, wait lists, rejections, and time she didn't have. Callan fell silent. Renee took a breath. That's when she met Celeste Harrow. Callan's brow furrowed. Who Aurora Strategies, Renee said. They present themselves as a high-security solutions firm. They promise miracles if you're desperate enough to sign what they put in front of you. Renee glanced at Ivy, then back to Callan. Celeste was connected to a private medical network. Experimental treatments, immediate access, full funding. Ivy's voice came out thin. Mom told me she was going to get help. She did, Renee said softly. But it wasn't free. Callan's jaw tightened. What did they want? A new identity, Renee replied. A sealed past. And silence. Callan's stomach turned. Silence about Ivy. Renee's eyes flashed with anger. They promised Ivy would be brought into Marin's new life once she was stable. They called it temporary separation. Ivy's lips parted, but no sound came out. Renee continued, voice trembling now, not weak, just human. Marin agreed because she thought she was buying time. She thought she was buying a future. She thought she'd come back with strength and money and answers. Callan's voice cracked. So she disappeared. She survived, Renee snapped. And I'm not going to let you call survival a crime. Callan flinched, then nodded. You're right. I'm sorry. Renee's gaze softened slightly. She became someone else. New name, new history, new circles. She was placed into a world where people wore expensive smiles and called it safety. Ivy finally whispered, and I was. Where Renee reached across the table, not touching Ivy's hands, just near them, offering presents. With me. Because your mom asked me to protect you until she could come back. Ivy's eyes glistened, but she didn't. Renee swallowed hard. Because the truth is, once Marin got better, Aurora didn't let go. They kept her tethered. They told her if she broke the agreement, it could destroy everything, her treatment plan, her records, her ability to stay alive. Callan's voice went dangerously quiet. So they saved her life and trapped her. Renee nodded, once eyes wet. Yes. Ivy's fingers rose to the butterfly pendant, pressing it to her chest, like she could hold her mother's heartbeat in place. Then she whispered, calm and devastating, so. She chose to live. A beat. Just not with me. Callan felt his heart crack in a way money couldn't repair, and for the first time he understood this wasn't just a mystery. It was a reckoning. No one spoke for a long moment. The cafe noise returned slowly, cups clinking, the low hum of conversation, a door opening and closing, but at their table time felt suspended. Ivy sat very still, fingers wrapped around the butterfly pendant, as if it were the only solid thing left in the room. Callan wanted to say something. Anything. An apology. An explanation. A promise. But every sentence sounded like an excuse before it even formed. Renee broke the silence first, her voice steady but gentle. Ivy, you don't have to respond to any of this right now. You don't owe clarity. You don't owe forgiveness. Ivy didn't look at her. She stared out the window instead, watching people pass by, people with errands, with destinations, with lives that made sense. She came back, didn't she? Ivy asked quietly. At least, sometimes. Renee nodded. Yes, not the way she wanted. Not openly, But she never stopped checking on you. Never. Callan leaned forward, careful. She talked about you, he said. Not by name, but she carried someone in her heart. I can see it now. The way she worried, the way she disappeared when things felt too happy. Ivy finally looked at him. Did she look normal with you? Callan's chest tightened. She looked alive, he said honestly. But there were moments, silences I didn't understand. Now I do. Ivy's voice dropped. So you got the good parts. The sentence wasn't cruel. It was factual. Callan didn't defend himself. He nodded once. Yes. That answer surprised all of them. Ivy studied his face, searching for cracks. And you're okay saying that I'm not okay, Callan replied softly. But I won't lie to you to feel better. Renee watched him closely, now reassessing. Ivy looked back at the pendant. She told me this meant she'd always be with me. Callan swallowed. She told me something similar. Ivy let out a small, breathless laugh that wasn't humor. Guess she needed it to remember herself. The realization settled between them, heavy but clarifying. Renee reached for Ivy's hand this time, and Ivy didn't pull away. Your mom didn't stop loving you, she said. She stopped being free. Ivy closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were dry. I don't want secrets, she said. Not anymore. Callan nodded immediately. Then we don't keep them. Ivy looked at him carefully. You don't even know me. I know enough, Callan replied. And I'm willing to learn the rest, at your pace. Ivy didn't answer, but she didn't leave either. They didn't make big decisions that day. No declarations, no dramatic plans. Just small, careful agreements, the kind that build safety instead of spectacle. Renee insisted on structure. If this continues, she said, looking directly at Callan, it happens in daylight, in public, and with boundaries Ivy controls. Callan nodded. Absolutely. Ivy crossed her arms. I pick the places. Deal, Callan said. And you don't buy me stuff to make this less awkward, Ivy added. Callan almost smiled. Also deal. Renee watched the exchange, noting how he never interrupted, never corrected Ivy's tone, never tried to position himself as the authority in the room. Weekends, Renee said finally. Short visits at first, meals, museums. Nothing private unless Ivy asks. Ivy shrugged. And you don't ask me to call you anything. Callan's throat tightened, but he kept his voice even. I won't. They stood to leave. Outside, the cold rushed back in sharp and immediate. Callan instinctively removed his scarf and held it out, not stepping closer, not draping it over her. Ivy eyed it suspiciously. It's optional, he said quickly. Just cold out here? After a second, Ivy took it and wrapped it once around her neck. It smelled faintly like cedar and something warm. She didn't thank him, but she didn't give it back either. As they walked, Renee stayed between them, not as a barrier, but as a bridge. Callan noticed how Ivy stayed close to Renee's side, how she matched her steps, how years of quiet reliance showed in every movement. At the corner, Renee stopped. This is as far as today goes. Callan nodded. Thank you for trusting me this much. Renee studied him carefully. I'm not trusting you yet. I'm watching you. That's fair, Callan said. Ivy hesitated, then spoke without looking at him. Next time, maybe the Science Museum. Callan's eyes lifted. I'd like that. Ivy nodded once, then turned away. As Callan watched them walk off, scarf fluttering against Ivy's jacket, he felt something unfamiliar stir inside him. Not hope, responsibility, the kind that doesn't ask permission, it just arrives and demands you be better. The first weekend visit felt like standing on thin ice. Callan's penthouse, normally silent and immaculate, suddenly felt exposed. He had prepared carefully a guest room, chosen with Renee's input books, instead of screens, no locked doors, no hidden expectations. Ivy walked in slowly, eyes scanning, not impressed, not intimidated. Just observant. It's big, she said neutrally. It's empty, Callan corrected. Or it was. He showed her where snacks were kept, where she could sit alone, where the door closed fully. He made a point of explaining that she could leave the room at any time, no questions asked. They didn't talk much at first. Callan tried cooking. It went badly. The pasta overcooked. The sauce burned slightly. He stared at the stove like it had betrayed him. Ivy watched for a while, then sighed. You're holding the knife wrong. Callan blinked. There's a right way, my mom said. Curl your fingers, Ivy replied, demonstrating with precise movements. So you don't hurt yourself. Callan copied her. Like this? Yeah, Ivy said. Less dramatic. Something about the word dramatic made Callan laugh quietly. It surprised them both. They ate at the kitchen island. The food was mediocre. No one pretended otherwise. After a moment, Ivy spoke. She cooked, didn't she? All the time, Callan said. When she was stressed, she baked. The whole place would smell like cinnamon. Ivy nodded. She did that for birthdays. Messy cakes. But good. Silence again, comfortable this time. Later, Ivy wandered to the window, looking down at the city lights. You don't ask many questions. Callan joined her, standing at a respectful distance. Because I don't want answers you're not ready to give. Ivy considered that. Most adults ask questions so they can feel smart. I already feel stupid, Callan said lightly. This isn't about me winning. Ivy huffed, almost amused. As the evening ended and Renee arrived to pick her up, Ivy hesitated by the door. She handed Callan his scarf back. Next time, she said, don't burn the sauce. Callan smiled softly. I'll practice. Ivy paused, then added quiet, almost to herself. You didn't try to fix anything today? Callan met her eyes. I didn't want to break it. Ivy nodded once, and for the first time she left without looking over her shoulder. The third weekend came with a quiet shift in the air. Ivy didn't cling to Renee's coat when she arrived. She walked in on her own shoulders, still squared but lighter, like someone testing whether the ground would hold this time. Callan noticed everything. He always did. They sat at the kitchen table with notebooks between them, homework for Ivy emails Callan pretended not to read. The city hummed beyond the glass walls, indifferent and alive. After a while, Ivy spoke without looking up. Renee said the people who helped my mom, they're called Aurora. Callan's pen stopped. Yes, he answered carefully. You know them, Ivy said. Not a question. I know of them, Callan replied, and I'm learning more slowly the right way. Ivy's jaw tightened. Are they bad? Callan didn't lie. They're powerful, and power without accountability can hurt people. Ivy absorbed that. Are they watching me? Callan set his pen down, turned fully toward her. No one is watching you, and if anyone tried, it would be handled legally and immediately. How do you know? Because I asked professionals who follow the law, Callan said calmly, and because Renee knows everything I do. That mattered. Ivy nodded once. Mom used to check the door twice, Ivy said suddenly. She said it was a habit. Callan felt the sentence land like a clue. Did she ever explain why he asked? Ivy shook her head. She just said some lives come with conditions. The word tasted bitter in the room. Callan leaned back, hands open. Ivy, if there's anything about Aurora that scares you, I'm not scared. Ivy cut in. I just don't want them deciding things for me. Callan's voice was steady. They won't. Ivy finally looked at him. You promise a lot. Callan met her gaze without flinching. I only promise what I can legally and honestly do. She studied him, then nodded. That's new too. That night, after Renee picked Ivy up, Callan stood alone in the kitchen, replaying every word. Some lives come with conditions. He picked up his phone and called Marcus Hale. Marcus, he said quietly, I need a full lawful review of Aurora strategies, corporate filings, medical partnerships, everything public and permissible. Marcus didn't ask why. Understood. Callan ended the call and stared at the city. For the first time, the threat wasn't abstract, it had a name. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. Not dramatic, not threatening, just expensive. Heavy paper, clean edges, language polished until it gleamed. Callan read it twice. Aurora Strategies requested a professional conversation regarding legacy matters connected to the late Mara Voss. They emphasized discretion, mutual respect, shared interest in protecting reputations. Callan felt his stomach tighten. He didn't crumple the letter. He documented it. He forwarded copies to his attorney, to Marcus, to Renee. Then importantly, he told Ivy. They sat in the living room, sunlight spilling across the floor. Renee was present as promised. They want to talk, Ivy said flatly after reading the letter. That's never good. It's not inherently bad, Renee said gently. But it's not innocent either. Callan spoke carefully. I will not meet them alone. And nothing happens without legal counsel. Ivy stared at the paper. Do they know about me? Callan answered immediately. They know I'm asking questions. That's all. Renee leaned forward. And Ivy is not part of any discussion. Period. Callan nodded. Agreed. Ivy folded the letter once then again. My mom used to say people who sound calm are often the ones hiding the most. Callan exhaled. Your mom was perceptive. That afternoon, Marcus returned with a preliminary report. Nothing illegal on paper. Aurora's partnerships were layered, distant, shielded by complexity. They operate in daylight, Marcus said. That's what makes them hard to challenge. And medical oversight, Callan asked. Fragmented, Marcus replied. Enough gray space to hide behind process. Callan leaned back, jaw tight. So we stay clean. That's the only way this works. Marcus agreed. That evening, Ivy helped Callan cook again. He'd improved slightly. As they chopped vegetables, Ivy asked if they ask you to stop. Will you? Callan didn't hesitate. Number. Ivy glanced at him. Even if it's easier, Callan set the knife down. Especially then. Ivy considered that in silence. Later, as Renee gathered her things to leave, Ivy lingered by the door. You're doing this. Because of her, Ivy said. Callan shook his head. I'm doing this because of you. Ivy blinked, caught off guard. Then she nodded once. Okay. The file arrived through Callan's attorney 2 weeks later. A sealed packet released under strict conditions, Mara's signature dated months before her death. Callan didn't open it immediately. He waited until Renee could be present, until Ivy could choose whether to be in the room. I want to know, Ivy said quietly. All of it. They sat together, 3 chairs in a triangle, no hierarchy. The video loaded slowly. Mara appeared on screen, thinner than Callan remembered, but her eyes were sharp awake in a way that made his chest ache. My name is Marin, she said. If you're watching this, it means I ran out of time. Ivy's breath caught. I agreed to things I shouldn't have, Mara continued. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself love could wait. Callan's hands clenched. They said they could separate fear from memory, Mara said softly. They said it would help me heal. A pause. It helped me survive, but it cost me pieces of myself. Ivy's fingers tightened around the butterfly pendant. If Ivy is watching, Mara said, voice-breaking, baby, I never chose a life without you. I chose the only path they left me. Callan felt tears blur the screen. I gave you the pendant because I knew one day I might forget who I really was, Mara said. It remembers for me. The video ended. Silence rushed in. Ivy didn't cry. She sat very still, then she whispered, voice steady and devastating. She didn't save herself. A beat. She saved us. Callan closed his eyes, breath shaking. Renee reached for Ivy's hand. Callan spoke softly, reverently. And she trusted you to finish the story. Ivy looked up at him, then eyes clear, not broken. Then don't let me be the last secret, she said. Callan nodded, his voice certain for the first time in years. Never. Aurora didn't wait long. 3 days after the video, Callan's legal team received a formal request for a meeting. No threats, no pressure. Just language polished to perfection, calm, respectful, and carefully vague. Callan agreed, on his terms. The meeting took place in a glass conference room high above the city. Lawyers present, notes recorded, doors open, everything clean, visible, and legal. Celeste Harrow arrived exactly on time. She was elegant in a way that suggested long-practiced silver-streaked hair, tailored coat posture that claimed space without raising her voice. She smiled politely at everyone, including Callan, as if this were just another professional courtesy. "Mr. Voss," she said warmly, "I'm sorry for your loss. Mara was remarkable." Callan didn't return the smile. "State your purpose." Celeste accepted the boundary without offense. "We're here to discuss privacy. Your late wife's medical history involves sensitive experimental care. Public misunderstanding could harm many people." Callan leaned forward slightly. "Including my wife Celeste," paused. "Including the institutions that saved her life." "That's not the same thing," Callan replied calmly. Celeste folded her hands. "Aurora gave Mara time she would not otherwise have had. In exchange, we required discretion. Agreements were signed, and consent obtained under desperation," Callan said. "That matters." Celeste's eyes sharpened just briefly. "We operate within the law." "So do I," Callan replied. "That's why we're here." One of Callan's attorneys spoke next, outlining concerns. Vague consent language, psychological pressure, identity reconstruction, tied to medical access. All questions, no accusations. Celeste listened patiently, then spoke again, her tone smooth. "We regret any emotional distress, but Mara benefited. She lived, she loved, she built a life." Callan's voice stayed level, but something steel-hard entered it. She lived under conditions she never fully understood, and she died trying to undo them. Silence stretched. Celeste stood. "Aurora has no interest in conflict. We ask only that you stop pursuing this line of inquiry." Callan stood as well. "No." Celeste looked genuinely surprised. "Mr. Voss, this could become complicated." Callan didn't raise his voice. "For you." Celeste studied him for a long moment, then offered a final, almost gentle warning. "Power doesn't like being questioned." Callan met her gaze. "Neither does love being edited." Celeste gathered her things. "We'll be in touch." When she left the room, felt colder. Callan exhaled slowly. This wasn't over, but for the first time he wasn't afraid. That night, Ivy couldn't sleep. Callan knew because he couldn't either. He found her sitting on the floor of the guest room, back against the bed, sketchbook open on her knees. She was drawing the butterfly again, same shape, different wings, stronger lines, sharper edges. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly from the doorway. Ivy shrugged. "Too many things make sense now." Callan stepped inside but stayed near the wall. "Do you want company or quiet?" Ivy considered. "Company, but not talking." Callan nodded and sat on the floor a few feet away. Minutes passed. Then Ivy spoke, voice low. "They talked about her like she was a project." Callan's jaw tightened. "I know. They talked about saving her." Ivy continued, "But nobody asked what she lost." Callan swallowed. "That's why this matters." Ivy closed the sketchbook. "What if she didn't come back because she thought I'd hate her?" The question hit harder than any accusation. Callan didn't rush his answer. "I think she was afraid of many things. Losing you, losing herself, and losing the chance to make it right." Ivy hugged her knees. "I don't know if I'm supposed to forgive her." "You don't have to," Callan said gently. "Love doesn't require permission. Neither does anger." Ivy looked at him then. "What if I'm too much trouble?" Callan's heart cracked quietly. "You're not trouble," he said. You're a person who went through something unfair. Ivy stared at the floor. Renee says people leave when it gets hard. Callan felt the weight of that truth. He didn't argue it away. Some do, he said honestly. That's why staying matters. Ivy's voice dropped to a whisper. And if I stay, what am I to you? The room went very still. Callan didn't speak immediately. Not because he didn't know, but because words carry consequences. Finally, he said, "You're family if you want to be." Ivy's breath caught. "Even if I don't fit," Callan shook his head. "Then we make a new shape." Silence again. Ivy stood suddenly and crossed the room, stopping in front of him. She looked up, really looked up. "You didn't disappear," she said. "You didn't lie, you didn't try to fix me." Callan felt his throat close. Ivy hesitated, then said it soft, uncertain, real, "Will you still be here tomorrow?" Callan answered without hesitation. "Yes." Ivy nodded, eyes shining but dry. "Okay." She climbed into bed, turning on her side. Callan stood to leave. "Hey," Ivy said quietly. He turned back. "You stayed," she said. "That's new?" Callan left the door slightly open. Morning arrived with pale sunlight and quiet. Callan was in the kitchen carefully making breakfast. He'd practiced the sauce. He hadn't burned anything. Ivy shuffled in wearing socks that were too big, hair slightly wild. "You're up early," Callan said. Ivy shrugged. Couldn't waste the quiet. They ate without rushing. After breakfast, they headed downstairs together. Callan slipped on ice near the lobby entrance, not dramatically, just enough to lose balance. Ivy reacted without thinking. "Dad." The word flew out before she could stop it. Silence crashed down. Ivy froze, eyes wide. Her face flushed instantly. She stepped back, horrified at herself. "I didn't mean," her voice shook. "I'm sorry." That was Callan didn't correct her. He didn't joke. He didn't pretend it didn't matter. He simply looked at her eyes, full and honest. Ivy swallowed hard. "Is that okay?" Callan knelt in front of her, careful not to crowd. "If that's what you feel," he said gently, "then yes." Ivy stared at him like the ground beneath her had just changed shape. Then she stepped forward slowly and wrapped her arms around him. Not tight at first. Testing. Callan held her, not crushing, not claiming, just present. Ivy's voice came muffled against his coat. "I don't want to lose another one." Callan's arms tightened just a little. "You won't." They stayed like that until the lobby doors opened and closed, life continuing around them. Later that day, Renee arrived. Ivy met her with calm eyes. "I called him Dad," Ivy said plainly. Renee looked at Callan, and Callan answered softly, "I was honored." Renee studied Ivy's face, saw no fear there, only resolve. She nodded. "Then we'll do this the right way." Ivy looked between them. "No secrets," she said. "Never," Callan replied. Outside, sunlight glinted off the city, and somewhere inside a quiet building, a broken story finally began to heal, not with power, not with control, but with a child choosing a word. Calling him Dad changed the air, but it didn't change the rules. Callan knew that. Renee knew it too. That afternoon, they sat around the dining table, not as a dramatic council, but as adults doing the unglamorous work that actually keeps children safe. Legal folders lay open. Calendars, checklists. No rushing. Renee said, voice firm but calm. "No assumptions. Ivy leads." Ivy sat with her legs tucked beneath her butterfly pendant resting against her sweater. She listened more than she spoke, eyes moving between Callan and Renee. Callan nodded. "Agreed. This is about stability, not sentiment." Renee raised an eyebrow. "Good. Because sentiment fades when paperwork doesn't." A family attorney joined by video, experienced, measured, and direct. She spoke to Ivy first. "Ivy, you're not being transferred or taken anywhere," the attorney said gently. Right now we're discussing options. Nothing happens without your consent. Ivy exhaled, shoulders lowering. They mapped it out. Renee remains Ivy's legal guardian for now. Callan receives approved visitation and caretaking authority. Privacy protections filed immediately. Counseling support offered, never forced. School coordination handled discreetly. Everything transparent. Everything documented. At one point, the attorney asked Ivy, "Do you feel safe?" Ivy didn't look at Callan before answering. She looked at herself. "Yes," she said. Callan felt the weight of that word settle into his bones. Later, after the call ended, Ivy lingered by the window. "You didn't try to speed it up," she said. Callan joined her, careful with space. "Because fast doesn't mean right." Ivy nodded. "My mom used to say that." That evening, Marcus Hale arrived with a thin folder, no drama, no urgency in his voice. "Everything's quiet," he reported. "No contact from Aurora, no surveillance, no interference." Renee crossed her arms. For now. For now, Marcus agreed. Callan thanked him and walked him out. When he returned, Ivy was in the kitchen washing a mug she didn't need to wash. "Are they going to make you stop?" she asked quietly. Callan leaned against the counter. "No one gets to decide who I care about." Ivy's hands stilled. "Care is easy," she said. "Staying is harder." Callan met her gaze. "I'm practicing." Ivy gave a small, serious nod. Practice mattered. Aurora didn't attack. They didn't threaten. They didn't intimidate. They waited. A subtle shift rippled through Callan's world, requests for clarification from partners, cautious questions from advisors, a journalist asking about legacy narratives connected to Mara's life. All polite. All legal. All pressure. Callan addressed it the same way he addressed everything now, slowly, publicly, and with records. At home, Ivy noticed the change. "You're quieter," she said one evening as they worked on a puzzle at the table. Callan considered the pieces. "I'm choosing my words carefully." "Because of me?" Ivy asked. Callan shook his head. "Because of us." That mattered too. Renee visited often, grounding the household. She watched Callan closely, not for affection, but for consistency. He passed the test by not trying to impress her. One afternoon, Ivy came home from school quieter than usual. She dropped her bag by the door and sat on the couch without speaking. Callan didn't rush in. He sat across from her, silent. After a minute, Ivy spoke. "A girl asked why my last name might change." Callan's chest tightened. "What did you say? That it might not?" Ivy replied. "That names don't always mean leaving." Callan nodded. "That's true." Ivy traced the butterfly pendant. "What if people say I don't belong anywhere?" Callan answered without raising his voice. "Belonging isn't voted on." Ivy studied him. "You always talk like that." Callan smiled faintly. "Only when it's important." That night, a formal email arrived from Aurora's counsel, still polite, still careful, requesting assurances that confidential materials would remain protected. Callan forwarded it to his attorney with one line: "Respond with process, not emotion." The reply went out the next morning, clear, lawful, unyielding. At dinner, Ivy asked, "Are you tired?" Callan considered lying. Instead, he told the truth: "Yes." Ivy nodded. "Me too." They ate quietly. Later, Ivy knocked on Callan's study door. "Can I sit?" "Of course." She curled into the chair opposite him, sketchbook in her lap. "I don't want you to lose things because of me," she said softly. Callan closed his laptop. "I'm not losing anything worth keeping." Ivy's eyes shone. "You're sure I chose this?" Callan said. "That matters." Ivy looked down, then up again. Then, "Thank you." The words were small. They carried weight anyway. The school held a spring open house on a Thursday evening. Renee planned to attend, but a late shift called her away. Ivy stood by the door, backpack already on uncertainty flickering across her face. "I can go alone," she said quickly. Callan shook his head. Or we can go together. Ivy hesitated. People might ask questions. Callan crouched slightly so they were eye level. Then we answer what you're comfortable with. A pause. Okay, Ivy said. At the school, the halls buzzed with parents and teachers. Callan stayed a half step behind Ivy, not leading, not hiding. A teacher greeted them warmly. And you are, Ivy took a breath. This is Callan. He's family. The word landed softly. Callan didn't correct it. Later, Ivy showed him her art pages of butterflies evolving across the semester, wings growing stronger, colors deepening. My mom used to say transformation wasn't magic, Ivy said. It was work. Callan smiled. She was right. As they left, Ivy tugged his sleeve. I did okay. You did great, Callan replied. Outside, evening air cooled their faces. Ivy walked closer, not touching, but aligned. At home, Renee called to check in. Ivy answered on speaker. We went together, Ivy said. It was fine. Renee paused, then smiled through the phone. I'm proud of you. After the call, Ivy sat at the table, thoughtful. Renee will always be my guardian, she said. Yes, Callan agreed immediately. And you'll still be here, Ivy continued, even if things are slow. Yes. Ivy's fingers tightened around the pendant. She stood, walked to Callan, and held it out. I don't want this to be just hers anymore, she said. I want it to mean now. Callan didn't touch it. Only if that's what you want. Ivy nodded and placed it back against her chest. It is. She looked up, voice steady. I'm not a secret. Callan felt his eyes sting. You never were. Ivy took a breath, then said it again, not testing this time. Certain. Dad. Callan answered simply, grounding it in reality. I'm here. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, something quiet and lasting took root. Aurora never announced its retreat. It didn't need to. The pressure simply faded. Emails grew less frequent. Legal language softened. Requests turned into acknowledgments. Oversight agencies began asking their own questions, calm, methodical, unavoidable. Callan didn't celebrate. He documented. Every meeting, every response, every decision stayed in daylight exactly where it belonged. One afternoon, Marcus Hale delivered the update in a quiet tone. Aurora has withdrawn its inquiries. No further contact. No objections filed. Renee let out a breath she'd been holding for months. Ivy listened from the kitchen doorway, arms folded loosely. So, they're done. They're finished deciding things for us, Callan said. That answer mattered more than victory. That evening, Callan sat with Ivy on the balcony as the city lights flickered on. The butterfly pendant rested against her collarbone, catching reflections of glass and steel. My mom fought them, Ivy said softly. Yes, Callan replied. And she left a path. Ivy nodded. I think she knew you'd walk it. Callan didn't pretend otherwise. I think she hoped. Ivy leaned back in her chair, the weight of constant vigilance finally easing from her shoulders. For the first time, no one was pushing. No one was watching. No one was waiting for her to disappear. The city breathed. So did she. The adoption process was quiet. No cameras, no announcements, no urgency beyond what Ivy herself asked for. Renee sat beside her in every meeting, steady and present. Callan followed Ivy's lead, never ahead, never behind. The family court judge spoke gently, directly to Ivy. Do you understand what this means? Ivy nodded. It means I choose who stays, the judge smiled. That's exactly right. When it was done, Callan didn't cry. He waited. Outside the building, Ivy stood on the steps holding the official papers like they were something fragile and alive. Renee hugged her first long, grounding familiar. Then Ivy turned to Callan. Okay, she said. Now you can cry. Callan laughed through tears he didn't bother hiding. That night, they didn't celebrate with anything extravagant. Just dinner. Just normal. Ivy taped one drawing to the refrigerator, a butterfly with wide wings, the words, "Not a secret," written beneath it. Callan stood back and studied it like art belonged there. Later, Ivy looked up from the couch. "So, last name stays the same?" "Yes," Callan said immediately. Ivy smiled. "Good. I like knowing where I came from." Callan nodded. "And where you're going?" Spring arrived gently. On the rooftop of Callan's building, a small garden bloomed flowers, chosen carefully, a butterfly sanctuary, built with help from Ivy and Renee. No plaques, no donors' names. Just space to breathe. Ivy opened a mesh enclosure and watched a blue morpho butterfly cling to a leaf, its wings slowly unfolding in the sunlight. "It's not an illusion," she said quietly. Callan smiled. "No, it's real." Ivy touched the pendant at her neck. "She didn't save herself." Callan finished the thought. "She saved us." Ivy nodded. Then she said the words that closed the circle, not dramatic, not loud, just true. "She trusted you." Callan placed an arm around her shoulders, careful, present. "And you," he replied. The butterfly lifted into the air, blue flashing against the sky. Ivy watched it go calm and certain. Ready to go home, Dad Callan didn't hesitate. Yes. Together they left the garden, no secrets between them, no shadows behind them, just a future built in the open. Did this story move your soul? Share your feelings in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Click the end screen to watch another heartfelt video. See you in the next story.